And welcome to Press Plus. My name is Ken Mijungu in for Mark Masai. Tonight we're talking sports. Rio mess, the Rio debacle, fiasco in Rio, scandal in Rio. But right here on Press Plus, we'll be using the hashtag Rio mess. Hashtag Press Plus. Let's first take a look at the highlights. The story from the other side, officials put on the spot by a sports journalist. The road to Rio mess, failures and false starts that embarrassed the athletics nation in Brazil. How journalists may have aided the dismal performance by AK and the National Olympics Committee of Kenya.
Torn shirt ad. He was the only member who showed side effects of a beating. Propaganda reaching the media was that his shirt was...
And late in the program, Nyeri MCA's not so civil way of interacting with each other. We tell you what happened in Nyeri. All right, tonight, sports, and introducing my guest right from my extreme left, Macharia Gaido. He's a veteran editor and also a columnist with the Daily Nation. Thank you, Macharia, for coming. Sadiq Shaban, a sports journalist, I like to refer to him as such, a veteran. Robert Soy, after missing on our screens for such a long time, he's back with us to speak to us. Our very own Watson Karuma, also speaking to us tonight. And we have Topi Liambila, he's also a sports journalist and a trainer. And finally, Evelyn Water, a sports journalist. I like to refer to every one of you except Macharia as sports journalists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Let's start from the story we know. Gentlemen and lady, don't you think it was a real mess in Rio? Let me start with Evelyn.
Why? Because I was in Rio.
Yes.
Rio was messy, but obviously in Rio you could not tell because everything seemed to be looking okay. But then there was a point where the only person who was speaking was one man. So when you ask about kids, you're told, speak to Mr. Soy. When you ask about an athlete missing on the starting lineup, speak to Mr. Soy. Then you realize that it's only one man running the show. So it was more of a one man running the show, which certainly was not very good for Team Kenya, which had about 90 officials.
All right. And from the top of this show, you have no relations with Mr. Soy.
No, we're not related. Anyway.
All right, let's go to Watson. Every single day you sat on the sports desk, looked at the sports stories from Rio, and of course, developments at home. What struck you most?
Of course, winning the 6 gold medals and the 6 silver medals obviously stood out. It was one of the best, if not actually the best performance by Kenya. That notwithstanding, we received the reports, courtesy of the journalists that were in Rio. And it's incredible. And at some point, we felt that this negative feedback coming from Rio may affect the team. And we may have slowed down at that point. Maybe we are guilty of that, but it was for good reason. We wanted the athletes first to compete. Let them compete. Once they do that, and then let now the bombshells start coming out. And to be honest, I think we've pushed that. And this started all the way before the team left for Brazil.
Okay.
And there were so many issues in camp, and all of them were well documented. But again, I have to say, sometimes the back pages do not get enough justice. Unless the stories from the back pages come to the front pages or comes to the top headlines in the news, on TV or on radio, then that's when people start taking note of these things. But they were there, and sports journalists across the country reported on those issues way before the Olympics.
We'll come back to you. Let's talk to Topi.
Well, I wonder why there's such a big surprise about what is happening now, or what happened in Rio, because as for myself, I think it's something that, was waiting, is a bomb waiting to go off. It's something that has been like, it's serial. We have had the same problems over and over again. It's not only just Rio, not just the Olympics, all the games, all international assignments. Right way back from the 90s, we have had this problem. So when you see the whole team, like especially the London debacle, the whole officialdom, all the officials who are in London are the same officials going to Rio, of course. What do you expect?
A repeat of the same.
A repeat of the same?
Nothing surprises me really out of Rio, and I think finally the soft underbelly of the corrupt sports system was exposed in Rio, and many perhaps will be rejoicing that it's being slowly dismantled. This isn't the first time that this particular case of complaints by athletes and allegations, either of kids disappearing, joyriders in the team, and now a whole new dimension about doping and officials getting kicked out of Brazil coming in. Remember in 2004 at the Athens Olympic Games, these things came up. In 2008 in Beijing, there were similar concerns. 2012 in London, in fact, it was worse because allegedly some officials nearly traded blows, and there was a very big fallout that was reported between the late Isaiah Kiplagat and the current chair of NOCA, Isaiah Kiplagat. And now, Kipchoge Keino, sitting here, we are dealing and discussing the same thing. I think as a nation, we need to ask ourselves, are we doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results?
Robert?
I think for a very long time, the federations and especially NOC and everyone else in the sports fraternity has bullied the government. And the government has been tied their hands, and there's nothing they could really do in terms of trying to protect the athletes. Because anytime these federations, the government said that the athletes are being frustrated in international events, the federations would come up and say, you know what, if you do that, then we won't participate next time. I had an opportunity in 2008 to be at the Beijing Olympic Games, and as Topil and Sadiq have said, it was the same issue. Apparently, when I wasn't even accredited myself, but there was a provision for non-accredited media. And there was a lot of complimentary tickets for guys to go in and support the teams. But we really had a problem even dealing with the chef de mission, as they call him. And it's a big name, so you need to respect him. He's like the head of state when it comes to the Olympic Games. And we couldn't really do our job as it's supposed to be. But what I realized was that there was a lot of opportunity for both athletes, sponsors, the media, the corporate world, everyone to attend the games and support these athletes. And all this time, since 2008, until the other day when it blew up in Brazil, I was like, you know what, this is not new. It has happened before, and I think somebody needs to take charge, and I think now the government has decided, you know what, let's discuss this. I really don't know what the stakeholders meeting was all about today, because even those guys were in that meeting today. I don't know what stake they're claiming.
We will get back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk to Macharia. Macharia, same thing.
First of all, you said I'm not a sports journalist. Let me correct let me correct that. Otherwise, I would not be here.
All right.
I am here by right.
All right, go ahead.
And I'm very versatile, so I report on anything under the sun.
All right.
You know, I wish we were not having this discussion today, because really we have taken away the headlines from the success of Rio in terms of our sporting achievements. But then this is a discussion we must have. The sad thing is that we're having it now, instead of having had it 20 years ago when these issues were being flagged. And here, I'm not blaming the government, I'm not blaming the NOC, I'm not blaming the... I'm blaming us, ourselves. I'm not saying you, I am saying us. Because we knew these things are happening all along, but we prefer to sweep things under the carpet.
When you say we
knew it as journalists.
Oh, as journalists, okay.
And not starting with Rio. Even before Rio, the preparations, we could see things are not working somewhere. We swept things under the carpet, as some of you here have admitted. I don't know if it's a case of patriotism or some misplaced nationalism. But you see something going wrong, and you say, because these are our people, let's cover it up. Mm-hmm. When the red flag was raised about doping in sports, what did we do? We all tried to deny it.
Exactly.
Until the thing blew up in our faces. Okay, and it's not that we didn't know. Even in the run-up to Rio, new allegations of doping were coming up. What were we doing as the media? We joined up, we took the political position that these are foreigners trying to finish our team, targeting us. Instead of trying to find out, is this true or not? Now we must deal with it.
I think I'll also support what Gaido was saying, because one thing that I was actually challenged by an athlete, not one, I think about 3 or 4 when I was in Rio, they said, look, we told you that we didn't want to be in Eldoret for the camp, but you swept it under the carpet, because at that moment, everyone, the NOC, Athletics Kenya, the mood of the people was that let us have the trials, let us have the camp in Eldoret. And unfortunately, we, the media, just drummed up Eldoret. And I remember, I think even Nation Media Group was a supporter of Eldoret being held, the camp, yeah, the trials being held in Eldoret, yes. You covered it live. But the athletes didn't like this. And I remember one of them told us, this is what you get off Eldoret.
Okay.
Yes, so certainly we
There were
are to
also
blame.
issues about the team selection. There were some very strange decisions. There was guys who were switched around in the 5,000 and 10,000 meters. Instead of asking, is this the right thing to do? We wrote stories of what a brilliant tactical move that is. When some MP was elected to run in the marathon, none of us stopped to
his
question.
time trial was
Look at these guys. He may have done 2:06, a time of 2:06, which is a very good time.
But
10
there's
years
someone
ago.
better.
Yeah.
But what is his best time over the last 4 years? Nowhere near rating selection. We did not question that.
He's done a good job
Again-
in running
again-
for office, and he's been campaigning very hard.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, I think the key thing, when it comes to athletics, which basically is what really carries the flag at the Olympic Games, I don't really want to talk badly about the other federations because I haven't seen them doing anything at the Olympic Games. But when we saw the MP becoming the captain of the team to the Olympic Games, then the questions came up. And we said, you know what, there was Eliud Kipchoge who's run since I think 2004, way back from the track to, being a marathoner. Maybe he could have done a better job as a captain. When we had stories about people missing tickets at the airport and somebody went straight onto social media and decided, you know what, I don't have a ticket even though it was just missing in the system, and decided to engage the public on his missing ticket, there was an issue as well over there. So I think the selection of the captain, the team, and even the managers who are going to Olympic Games should really be
So in other words, Robert, what you're saying, our team was compromised from the beginning.
Yes.
Allow me to throw in some span in the works there. My good and my senior speaks about selection, criteria. To be fair to Wesley Korir, he was not the appointing authority or the selection authority. So like everybody else, I would imagine, he had to go through the process that the selectors determined fit. Whether it was merit, whether it had merit or lacked merit, then I think that's academic. But to look at, issues that started bedeviling this team, like Evelyn has said, we decided to devolve and say, let's try devolution here. So we devolved athletics and we took it to Eldoret. But we also devolved our problems all the way to Rio. And it's actually coming back to
Are we coming back to you?
us.
I know Topi wants to say something,
Yeah.
but first, let's try and put this to perspective. And it was dubbed the fiasco in Rio. Citizen TV had an in-depth look at what happened in Rio, and here is part of that with Wahiga Mahura, courtesy of Citizen TV.
The documents signed off by the chef de mission, Stephen Soy, show that officially Kenya had a team of 87 athletes and 97 officials in Rio. The athletes list with 87 names seems quite in order, and it includes the Rugby Sevens men's and women's team, 46 athletes, 3 boxers, 1 judoka, 1 weightlifter, 1 archer, and 2 swimmers. But it is the list of officials with 97 names that raised eyebrows. It appears that some relatives of officials found their way on the list. Number 66 on the list is Ian Kipkosgei Keino, a son to NOC chairperson Kipchoge Keino. A website, letsrun.com, lists him as a manager of the family's high-performance training center in Eldoret. His role in the team remains unclear. Then, NOC Secretary General Francis Kinyili Paul was also accompanied by his son Vincent Kinyili Paul, whose name is also on the list at number 68. The young Kinyili, who posted these pictures on Facebook, is a football player with a local club in Kenya, and his role with the Kenya team in Rio also remains a mystery. Then there was a delegate by the name Peter Ekai Ajore, who is believed to be a close relative of the Principal Secretary, Ambassador Richard Ekai. However, Ekai is also listed as a bodyguard in the Ministry of Sports and could have traveled on official duty. Nevertheless, his pictures on the sandy beaches of Copacabana show that he took some time off to have some fun. But the biggest question mark in the list of athletics officials is number 36. Her name is Juliet Chepkorir Maritim, and she happens to be the head of delegation Stephen Soy's wife. And if all this was curious enough, Imagine my shock when I saw my name, Wahiga Mwaura, among the list of journalists that had allegedly been sponsored by NOC to cover the Rio Olympics. Yet my employer, the Royal Media Services, had fully catered for all my expenses in Rio de Janeiro. What was going on here? I sought to find out from the head of the Kenya delegation, Stephen Soy.
All right, before we hear what the head of delegation says, let me go to Topi. Just listening to Mwaura, did we know or didn't we know? And if we knew, what did we do? Did we even see the list before it went to Rio?
I think the biggest problem here, it's very clear, Guy, though, as just mentioned in his opening statement, that, the media is on trial here. And we have to accept the fact that, our media today, the media in Kenya, having been part of the media, and I'm still in the media as a consultant, it's sad to say, but you know what? I think it's a joke. Because if you can be able to see a list like that and you don't bring it up, if you can see that kind of, and you see, we choose to look the other way.
But I'll tell you something. I was in Rio. I never saw that list until post-Rio. I asked for this list, and the list that I was given and the list that I have is a list of only the
your name
athletes.
is on that list, right?
My name is on that list.
Yeah, she was also.
Yes.
Okay.
Because why I'm saying this,
I was not sponsored. Let me tell you what happened. My case is very interesting. I was called, I think, a day before, 2 days before, and I was told, do you know you're traveling with us? I said, how? I said, we have a ticket for you. Wow. But then the names listed there are not the names on my passport. So then I had a ticket already bought by Sports News Arena on Air France, which was a very long route, I think 26 hours. And then here is a government ticket, which takes you, it was taking, I think, cumulative 12 hours. We said, it's okay if the ticket is there, but if only the airline will allow you to board with different names.
With different names, yeah.
Exactly. So the good thing is that both tickets were on the same day, but one was in the night, one was in the morning. I traveled.
I know, we had we'll come to you.
Yeah.
But
Even NTV had people.
Yes. And this is the scenario. This is the scenario, and it's quite funny. I'm sure all those the journalists that are named in that list were probably accredited by NOC.
Yes, we were accredited.
And so what NOC does now is put their names in the list.
Yes.
And when that happens, because I know the 2 journalists mentioned in that list from NTV, same thing happened. But NOC was very categorical. We are not sponsoring you. We just give you accreditation, but then you need to find your way in Rio.
Yes.
So what happened? So this list probably is the list that goes to collect the money from the government. Yes. But that money does not get the journalists.
Okay. No, but it's not about money. This was a listing for tickets. Let me correct you. This was a listing for tickets. If it is a listing for tickets, it is not bad for NOC or the government to sponsor. I will tell you something something that I learned. The British government sponsors its journalists.
Yes, it does.
The Australian government does. Here across the border, they do. But does it always happen? This was the first time ever in my 12 years as a sports journalist that I actually traveled on a government ticket.
I know, it's very rare.
Yes, it's very rare. So what actually makes me wonder is it something that has always been? Remember, I've covered, this was my 4th Olympics. Okay. So has it always happened?
Normally what happens, and I know this from my experience also with the National Olympics Committee of Kenya, sometimes to assist journalists to get visas, they normally have a list that they send, as a Kenyan list to the embassies for visas.
But you
it does not necessarily mean
visa for Olympics.
Yeah.
The accreditation is your visa.
Accreditation is if you are accredited by IOC through your NOC, then you can get accreditation.
Exactly.
But here's the deal. Now we are dealing with a situation where possibly this list was used now to be able to pay allowances, which is then subject of interest. But like Tony said, as much as you're pointing fingers at the officials at NOC and government for complacency and alleged corruption, we should also bring the ball back home and see, as journalists, what did we do?
We will be getting back to that. As we take a break, I'll give Macharia the final word on this.
Yeah, I think he has put it. Let's also take a look at ourselves. The government, of course, has a big problem. NOC and all the other sporting bodies have a big problem. Right now we are seeing the Ministry of Sports trying to deflect blame by pretending to take action and forgetting that they are part of the problem. They don't have any right to appoint any task force or anything because they are the ones who should be under investigation. As simple as that.
Yeah, and just to interrupt, there was a steering committee. This steering committee was chaired by the PS. So it was a government-chaired steering committee.
CS Wario himself said
yes.
he sat in 2 of those
Exactly.
meetings.
Yeah.
Two
so
of them.
they knew about this list and they knew everything. The steering committee is what they actually decide on the budget, they allocate the budgets. This was a government committee led.
Everything is normally done with,
exactly.
with the knowledge
Full
of
knowledge.
the ministry. Yeah, the knowledge of the
All right,
ministry.
we'll
There's
take a
nothing
break.
about
The hashtag is PressPass, hashtag Rio Mess, at Ken Mijungu, at NTV Kenya, at Macharia Gaido, at Topi, Liam C, at R_soy, at Evelyn Wata with a double T, at Sadiq Shaban with a double D, and at What's 2K with a double T. We'll take a short break. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to PressPass. But first, before we continue with this discussion, let's take a look at the mess that was in Rio as reported by Sean, one of our reporters. Eventually, some action took place and hard decisions had to be made. And people, and here I mean the athletics officials, were questioned rather, and others taken to court. Let's take a look.
Well, it was a dramatic day for sports officials following President Uhuru Kenyatta's directive to crack down on officials involved in the scandal surrounding the Kenya team to the Rio Olympics. Cabinet Secretary for Culture and Sports Dr. Hassan Wario was ordered to report to the Criminal Investigations Department Wednesday morning, while Sports Kenya Director of Finance Francis Githaiga was also arrested and grilled at Integrity House in regards to the misappropriation of Olympic funds. Githaiga was released on bond and ordered to appear at Milimani courts on Thursday morning. The team management, which included government and National Olympic Committee officials, have been accused of mismanagement to the extent that some athletes had no tickets and the inclusion of unnecessary officials to the traveling party. Whereas the issue of joyriders and theft of official kits has been going on for decades, this time the anger has seeped into the highest echelons, with President Uhuru Kenyatta promising Kenyans that those in the wrong will be dealt with the full force of the law. The harbinger was evident even before the Olympics when the athletes were in camp.
He wasn't as professional as he was supposed to be. Because right now we are in a journey of clearing our name.
Kenya's chaotic preparations blew up in public when world javelin champion Julius Yego was caught up in a ticketing mix-up at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as he was leaving for Rio de Janeiro with part of the Olympic squad, which nearly led to athletes staging a sit-in.
You know, such behaviors, you know, and it shouldn't happen again, because remember when we had the opening of the camp in Eldoret, when the Honorable Member of Parliament, who is also happens to be the marathon in the marathon team, Honorable Korir, did mention about the disappointment we were getting from the management. It was real, and you know, many people maybe thought Korir was just a politician, but he was really pointing on the issues we had given to him.
The rot of the knock management was so deep that marathon gold medalist Eliud Kipchoge was kept waiting on arrival at Rio's International Airport and had to eventually hitch a ride to the athletes' village with Uganda's 2012 London Olympic marathon champion Stephen Kiprotich. Deputy President William Ruto travelled to Rio de Janeiro to assess the situation. Ruto spoke to athletes and officials to find out exactly what was going wrong behind the scenes, following the expulsion from camp of athletics official Michael Rotich and sprint coach John Anzra.
We have made sure that every law that makes sure that we protect our sports status has been applied to make sure that all, Mr. Rotich and any other person that the law is going to find on the wrong side will face the full force of the law.
Rotich was caught on camera by British journalists promising to warn athletes in advance about doping tests, while Anzra was sent home for allegedly posing as an athlete and giving a urine sample. Anzra later claimed that he was a victim of Knox mismanagement and was only in the athletes' village using 400-meter runner Ferguson Rotich's accreditation so he could eat breakfast.
After breakfast, 3 guys came. they asked me, where are you coming from? I told them we are Kenyans. They wanted to see the accreditation. And since I was putting on Ferguson's accreditation card, he went through his list and he told me I was one of those guys who are supposed to go to the doping place. That was random testing.
DP Ruto also ordered a probe into Kenya's long-term sponsor Nike, who complained about the misuse of kit meant for athletes and officials. So despite the appalling treatment they received from the officials, Kenya's athletes went on to have the most successful games, collecting 6 gold, 6 silver and 1 bronze medal. The gold in the marathon coming in a backdrop of Kenyan bottles missing at water points and drinks being switched. The pressure will be on the government to crack down on the culprits and prevent a repeat of the shameful acts happening at future games. Sean Carter-Villas, NTV.
All right, Sean Carter-Villas summarizes this, but I want to go back to 2004 in Athens. There were complaints about kids, there was complaints about joyriders. Then 2008, and Robert was there. Beijing was the same thing. 2012, London was the same thing. In fact, I remember the kids being sent way ahead of time. There was a lot of complaints about that. Last year during the World Championship, there was complaints about the same thing. And now Commonwealth, yes. And now there are complaints about 2016. It means this is something that has been going on year in, year out, or at least the period that we have these games. The question is, what have we been doing as journalists? Because there's a question on Twitter right now asking me to ask everyone here to declare their stand when it comes to knock. But I'll not give you that opportunity. I'll go to Macharia first. Yeah?
You mean it has nothing to do with the knock? You could be a shareholder. All we know.
I think it's a very tricky situation when you are dealing with some of these global bodies, particularly knock and football, because the jurisdictions sometimes tend to extend beyond the national jurisdiction. You have seen the problems we have had with football management in Kenya. And every time it needs to be cleaned up, FIFA gets in the way. We might have now the same problems with this so-called disbandment of NOC, because there are already issues. Does the Minister for Sports have the mandate or the jurisdiction to disband NOC? But there are problems. And one of the problems is that we have in Kenya a group of people who have become what you might call professional sports officials. And you will find a guy running from athletics. When he loses the elections at Athletics Kenya, he ends up somewhere as chairman of AJU or something, and from there finds his way into NOC or some other place. These things happen. Now, the media, we have tried taking on these things, but not aggressively enough. And sometimes I get this feeling that we feel that, as I said earlier on, a false sense of patriotism or nationalism. The other one is that, for me, it is no different from the way we approach our politics and our corruption. A politician steals something, you say, you ni mtu wetu, achana naye. As simple as that. We have the same approach to sports management.
Yeah, I think the Sports Act 2013 is very clear. There are a few amendments that are supposed to be done on that bill that would eventually revolutionize sports in this country. What the so-called stakeholders have done over time is make sure they circumvent that bill, because they know the moment that bill is through, there will be elections. They will be all the federations will be supposed to align themselves alongside the bill itself. So over time, that has been the problem. There has been no law that really declares what is going to happen to federations that misbehave. This should have been a thing of the past. You said 2004, 2008, now 2016. If the 2013 bill was by now passed in law, and the amendments, as the stakeholders had claimed before that it had typos and errors, was amended, then we will not be having these problems.
But that
we have the Societies Act, and all these sports federations are registered under the Societies Act. That is where action can be taken. If you don't hold your elections, or if you rig your elections, that is the place where all those guys can be held to account.
You just taking back your own words, Mr. Macharia Gaido, about jurisdiction.
Yes, no, what I'm saying is
we are
this.
sitting here.
No,
Yes.
we have. How aggressively have we tried to apply that Societies Act?
Agreed.
Not enough, because anytime we are threatened by FIFA or somebody, we step back. I remember the only time we tried was in I don't remember the year. Minor Karaoke in his KFF debacle, and that time the Registrar Society is the one who tried to move. Plus also criminal investigations, because if you steal money, as simple as that, that is a criminal offense.
Yeah.
I don't think FIFA can protect you.
Now, here we are sitting here.
Sadiq,
Ken,
before I
yes.
speak to you, Robert has not answered the question about journalists. Have we known? Do we know? Because amendments and proposing amendments does not answer this question.
I think if it comes to, then boils down to the media, I think we would be blaming individual media houses on not acting on particular issues. Lately, we've seen sports bulletins at 10 or 10:30, politics coming up. So even if you're staking a claim here that sportsmen or women are suffering, nobody will really get the gist of the story.
Okay.
I think print has really tried to do a good job because we can read, and social media also really fighting. Kenyans really want to know, and they're contributing to this. They really don't understand where the problem is. But the key thing, like I said, is if all these acts were amended and supported by the media, then we for sure would know where we're supposed to be headed. And all these cases will not be rising up every other time.
Every other.
Yes.
Okay.
Ken, I'll say, let me be a devil's advocate here and also just pick up from where Macharia Gaido has said. A few years ago, when the government and stakeholders tried to take on Football Kenya Federation, KFF, FKL, or whatever names it was known by that time, fellows would rush to Zurich, and within 2 weeks, FIFA would suspend Kenya. We are sitting here, possibly awaiting a wrath of IOC sometime either December or earlier about what has happened here. And I think IOC is looking to see whether we may go Kuwaiti way, because they were banned and they had athletes competing under an independent flag. Bringing the ball back home, sometimes the national federations, including Athletics Kenya, has provisions for the media. They take media personnel to some of these events. So sometimes some of us feel, look, since we are the mercy of the federation, then we could sweep these matters under the carpet, because they say you cannot buy the hand that feeds you. So in that particular instance, then we lose an opportunity that has been presented to be able to find fault. And I'm not saying this is across the board. Some of, and I'm not casting aspersions on my media colleagues, but I'm saying there could be an element of a missed opportunity there. Because what has been different this time, we've had journalists going to Olympics every year. We've had journalists going to World Championships every year. Okay. Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games, these issues have been there. What has been different this time for us to be able to confront this problem and project it in this matter? Because like he said, by the way, you should be having athletes here with their medals on their chest, not journalists discussing problems about what happened in Rio.
But what he says is really good. It's really important and true. Some of us, we sometimes feel like our hands are tied because this is the hand that feeds you. And then the other problem is, why is it that our media houses let the associations, let the NOCs fund our trips? Why should this be the case? Is it that Olympics or the World Championships is not an important thing? And it only just happened, that, oh God, the Olympics is next week? No, it didn't happen. Why do they let this happen? But either way, even as much as my ticket, I travel on the government ticket, only the government ticket. I was the first to expose the issue of the sprinter, who was left out because of the incompetence of the NOC. Because there was no way you'll carry a sprinter, list him in the team, and then all of a sudden you realize that he doesn't hold a Kenyan passport. Okay. What was all these people?
And
what were all these people? Yes, no, exactly. So all these things. So it doesn't mean that just because my ticket has been paid by the government, I cannot be able to, because I am there to cover the athletes.
Okay, Watson.
First of all, and the only reason right now we see CS Wario acting very tough is that he's backed by actually the Sports Act. And that's why we see the officials being taken to court, right? By undermining or trying to interrupt the normal flow of sports in this country. And that's the reason they're in court at this particular moment. However, the federations have actually refused to comply with the Sports Act.
NOC was one of them.
Yes,
NOC
and
was against
once you
it.
do that, that means you are not bound by the law.
Exactly.
And that is something I'm sure the lawyers will be working on. That NOC is not, but look at it this way. They don't comply, yet they go to the government
to ask for money.
Yeah, but that's where the buck should stop, because if they do not comply, then the government has got to exercise the muscle and say, okay,
Exactly, but
fine,
they
you
give them the
comply
money.
to the act, or we don't fund you. You can run your own show.
However,
because you're independent. But this one's
however,
why is it difficult to comply with the act? Why? What is the scapegoat? What are they using?
Because
the
they
main
know.
issue, the main issue was the clause that said that the government can dissolve,
Yeah.
the government can, can appoint,
Yes.
can appoint a caretaker committee.
Yeah.
That was something that now
It
federation
Yeah,
would
but
want.
because that's
But
what
anyway,
charter.
it goes against the charter, and it goes against even the FIFA constitution. All their constitutions they can quote.
Wait,
But all this time,
I need
you
to
know-
understand this.
Yeah.
That is the reason why they can't comply.
Yes, because
don't
it goes
want to
against.
No,
Yeah.
but
If
seriously,
they domesticate
arrogant.
these other
You
laws-
cannot-
it's arrogant.
FIFA.
But
It's arrogant.
You can
FIFA.
domesticate, but then your statute must adhere to the overall, the international
Which is the
federation,
IOC,
which is the
the
IOC.
yeah, but these international organizations, we have seen it in the IOC, we have seen it in FIFA. These organizations themselves are corrupt to the letter.
We know
They
that.
have had
It's-
issues.
IOC is
So
an exclusive club
if
of
they
corrupt
come,
people.
yeah, exactly, they have cartels there, and these cartels have actually it's kind of like been pushed over to our people and it's given us that impunity on the local front. But what we are saying is this: the media must come up. We must make a case, because if these guys are going to be like that, but there's no case against them, then obviously they're going to go run scot-free.
Like I said,
can I sit here?
it's going to go
Yeah.
it's going to go down to independent media houses and the journalists who are covering these particular events.
Look at
If-
Robert.
if-
Robert, look at this tweet as you say that. Njoroge Jr. says journalists should be funded by the government for the trip. The scenario really ashamed Kenyans.
Well,
Let's just give it to
No,
Robert.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the government funding.
No, should be. He says should be, because
be,
when
yeah.
we have a lot of people there, then we expose. The tweet is up actually.
Yeah, I think if then the government has to fund the journalists to travel for national events, which is basically the World Championships, the World Cups of this world, and athletics and the Olympics, I don't think there's an issue. But like I said, it boils down to an individual reporter and the media house on how they are going to take the stories, analyze the stories, and put them on air or on print. If you have then another relationship
No, I
with
think,
NOC,
I think it's beyond
Can-
relationship.
can-
because
can a few weeks ago,
Let
a
Robert
few weeks
finish.
ago,
Let Robert finish.
if you have another
Let
relationship with,
Robert-
if you have a relationship with NOC that's totally different from what we know,
but because
then
the
it's
same bed.
A few weeks
the
ago-
same bed, the same bed with them.
With
What
them,
do you
you think
expect?
what are the same?
I covered alongside my colleagues the national trials in Eldoret, and I asked a high-ranking National Olympic Committee of Kenya official. I said, "Are you going to throw this team, the Olympics team, to the public for ownership? In other words, are you going to provide an opportunity for the public to engage with this team? Are you going to unveil this team like we saw Britain, US, and other, and launching their Olympics team and presenting it to the public with their Olympic kits, the ceremonial kits, the competition kits, and whatnot?" They said, at this time, I'm not so sure whether we, and it fizzled in the crowd. And shortly after, we had problems with the kids. So I'm just tempting to imagine that perhaps there was something that was being hidden. And the question that now arises is it time the entire system is opened up, including how procurements is done for these kids,
Even
and
for
how
election.
the National Olympic Committee of Kenya enters into agreements with Nike, with Adidas, with
Remember,
FILA,
the
and
deputy
everybody else.
president asked for that list, all those things, contracts and everything. They
So
want to
I think
understand the
it's
process.
time. We are looking at FK Paul today. We are looking at Kipchoge Keino today, and anybody else. But what are we doing to the system? Is it time to overhaul the system as a way of addressing the root cause? We could be treating the system,
that's
but not the
the
disease.
system must be overhauled. The system must be overhauled, because
I will come to that.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, two things. One, this issue of the government funding journalists. Maybe legally there's nothing wrong with it, but ethically and morally, it is not quite right.
Yeah, true.
Because I would want to imagine that Nation Group or Standard Oil Media can fund their own journalists to
But
cover the
unfortunately,
Olympics.
Probably they
or
don't have the
anything
money
else.
sometimes.
They don't
They-
have. For sports, they don't have.
No, that is. I'm coming to that. They should have. And it is up to us as sports journalists to pressure our employers to recognize us the same way they recognize the political reporters, the news desk, and everybody else. But we tend to sit back in our corner somewhere very far away and operate as if we're some autonomous state. I've gone to editorial meetings right here at Nation where there are very big events coming up. There's nobody from the sports desk at the editorial meeting to lobby for his story to be page 1.
We work late, so we come in.
No, those are excuses. Those are excuses.
All right, we have to take a break, but before we take the break.
Yeah, what I'm saying that, because what we are saying, what Gaito is saying about this question of, ethics are critical. And we know that, the moment that, you remove that aspect of, funding your own journals as a media house, you lose something. Because it's even like when you go out to the field, you're going out as who? As Nation Media. But the moment that the government funds you, you're not going to write anything against the government. The moment that the association funds you, you are going along as part of the association. So you're going to talk like the association. No. And it was quite, it has happened before.
It has happened before.
Happened before.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'll tell you a very good example.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'd like to pick it up.
Well, it emerged according to the list that Sports Cabinet Secretary Dr. Hassan Wario was accompanied by 7 aides, including 3 bodyguards, 2 communication staff, and 2 personal assistants. The 2 personal assistants were Wesley Maritim and Twaha Dida, while the communication staff were Monica Sairo and Richard Abura. The 3 bodyguards are listed as Ali Guyo, Lamek Oriku, and Abdullahi Omar. Did the minister really need 3 bodyguards?
3 bodyguards came to Rio. Is there any truth to such allegation?
Let's say bodyguards, for example. Bodyguards, how Rio is. As a person, if you are coming as a CS, aren't you entitled to some bit of safety? We have examples of ministers being bagged, isn't it, in the Copacabana and other areas. In Kenya, people think the Copacabana is just a leisure place, but it's also a venue for beach volleyball, isn't it? It is where most hotels are located. You've also seen here, really, if I want to get a vehicle, who do I run to? It is somebody that is a PO or what that comes to help me. Isn't it? So generally, when you look at it, people would want to just exaggerate these things. What is here is officials that we have needed as a ministry to co-network, and that's what we are doing.
The principal secretary, on the other hand, was accompanied by his secretary, Maureen Motuku. Also on the list of officials is sports registrar Rose Wasike. Heads of various sports parastatals, including Sports Kenya, the Sports Fund, Kenya National Sports Council, the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, also travelled to Rio de Janeiro. In total, 24 people travelled from the sports ministry and other related parastatals, 12 of whom travelled on business class. Our source claims that there were also officials on this list who did not travel but could have drawn allowances.
There's no way you can replace Waiga Mwaura. Waiga Mwaura remains Waiga Mwaura. Stephen Soy remains Stephen Soy. Well, if there are those indications, then let me be shown evidence. That is when I will believe.
All right, that's the last part. And of course, there are pertinent questions raised. And one of the things that my panel has been talking about here, and there's a tweet that is up from Chegi James. He says, to maintain impartiality, media should fund themselves lest government plays carrot and stick demands in relation to sports. And one of the things that you agree here, it's better for a journalist to be funded by the government rather than any of the federations. And you have reasons for that.
Yeah, I think that's better because once you have the federation funding you, you cannot critique the federation. But you see, as a government, if you are funded by the government, for instance, it becomes national interest. You're covering to see how much the 600 million, how the 600 million was actually distributed within the team or how it was spent. But when you have the federation covering you, sponsoring your ticket, then when they go out there and mess up, you can't be able, for instance, when the 2 athletes failed to line up when the sprinters last year, you can't be able to expose such a thing because, look, you're bringing shame to Kenya and you're here on an AK-sponsored ticket. So it's not ideal that the federation should sponsor you. But government does not hold any stake in any federation, okay. I believe.
All right. I'll throw it to Macharia because there's a conversation that I want to begin right from here.
Where I come from, I am generally suspicious
Of any sponsorship.
of government, okay, particularly. And it's not an ideal situation to be sponsored by the government. Even when you say you're doing national duty, I think you do have a responsibility beyond what you might think is patriotism to simply report the truth. And I think sometimes the truth may not be appealing also to the government. And this Rio case is a case in point because you have two culprits here. One is NOC.
The other is a ministry.
The other one is the Ministry of Sports. If you are there under the sponsorship of the Ministry of Sports or any other government department, you might shy away from exposing some of these things. And this applies not just to sports, to anything. To anything. We have seen people going on government junkets, on some foreign trips. That is not right. You can go on the government plane, but pay for the ticket. Your employer should be able to pay for the ticket. I've covered elections in different other countries. In the U.S., we were trying to get a flight on Obama's plane one time. They sent us a bill. So this is how much it will cost. They'll accommodate you, but you pay for it. Yeah. And you're going to be put up in a hotel. You don't even have a choice of which hotel you're going to be in. You'll be put up in what you might call the team hotel, but you will pay for your own meals and your own lodging. As simple as that. And I think any serious media house should be able to accommodate its sports people. Like I have said, if sports in the media houses is not given enough room or enough prominence, it is up to us as sports journalists to fight for that space. Because there's actually nothing that unites Kenyans more than sports. Yeah. There's nothing that makes Kenyans happier. You saw that with the rugby sevens, with successive Olympic Games, Commonwealth, World Championships. There's nothing that brings Kenyans together more than sports. And there's nothing that also sells newspapers more than sports. So why should sports be put in the back burners?
I think that has been our DNA, that we belong to the back pages until or unless there's gold medal, then we can project you on the running order or on the papers, then we can put you there. But like, I want to agree and inclined to agree with what Gaido has said. The media houses in this country must invest in sports journalism and investigative sports. It's not just about reporting goals and who scored and whatnot. There's got to be an element of preemptive journalism, not so much of reactive journalism as we have seen. And I'm very glad recently the new laws that then opens up government for scrutiny and access to information should be able to make our work easier in the coming years. But there should be deliberate investment and budget, backed up by budget, for sports people to be able to travel freely if budget allows, and not to depend on third parties for sponsorship and probably, in terms of tickets and accommodation. Otherwise, we're going to lose our editorial soul. And going forward, Mijungu, I think everybody should, as we look at what has happened, everybody should reflect and see where they probably would have done something, and what is it then sitting here 4 years from now in Rio 2020, what we should be doing. It would be a shame if we sit here again 4 years from now and discuss about kid disappearance. If we are not going to see changes perhaps in future, making sure that issues of transparency and accountability are addressed way before the team is even named, selected, and boards the plane. We need, for instance, to see in future a public event to unveil this team at a location where sponsors of the team and everybody else would come. And speaking of which, we also need to see sponsors who pumped in money, including Lotto and East African breweries, coming and speaking about this mess. Yeah, their silence, the corporate silence, is quite telling. Because here is NOC, which has been disbanded, and yet there is a probe that is supposed to probe these people. But sponsors are keeping quiet, yet they put in money. By the way, I
drank quite a bit of Tusker in support of the Olympic team. So I'd like a good accounting.
Yeah. So I think everybody must soul search and say, hey, was my hands in the jar? Editorially, financially, or otherwise.
This can only happen if we work with the athletes. Do we do that? Because Evelyn was saying that the problem is we never listen to them. So when things go wrong, that's when we ask them questions.
On this occasion, Kenyan athletes, and I can bear witness to this, were a little bit withdrawn because of the doping focus that had even come in so much. It had been domesticated per se, in the Kenyan context. So some of them were a little bit shy to engage, but it also depends with the kind of inter-individual relationship we have. Some of these guys are really pretty cool. They are very approachable, and you can get stories out of them, not just about doping, but stories of positivity and stories that actually appeal to a lot of people that are reading. So there is no excuse. You know, as media, there is no excuse why we are sitting here and say we didn't get this list in time.
No, what I know again, another difficult thing, especially when you talk about the athletes, is the fact that, you know, most of these athletes are in the forces. And the officials are also in the forces. Most of the managing officials. So there is this unwritten thing that, you know, the athlete does not talk to the media. Most of those athletes, when you approach them, they will not answer you. You'll begin, when you ask him a question and he or she thinks that it's a question that maybe will touch on him, he'll look round. You know, like, is there an officer looking at me? And this is a problem that has been from a long time. We had people like John Ngugi in the 90s. John Ngugi could not even speak. When you speak to any of those, we have had people like, you know, like the debacle in 1984 Olympics, Demosho Mondi, why he was thrown out.
Yeah, but then I don't think that's a good enough reason, because look at it now. Now they can speak through their social media. They can speak through their Twitter handles and their Facebook. And they've really done that.
Yeah, but that's what Diego did.
But the
question is, Diego did.
We don't do it.
But we don't pick it up.
We
don't pick it up.
A lot of them will agree to speak anonymously.
They will. They agree,
anonymously.
Yes. But before they don't have that assurance. They never had that
even
assurance.
for the case of the kids, most of them, I remember I got some inboxes. Even for the issue for Eldoret, some of us even told us, so you guys come to Eldoret and see there's no one in camp.
All right,
so
tell us, do we do enough groundwork as journalists to bring this out?
First of all, the only thing we should be accused of is not doing enough. But we have done plenty much. We sat here in this very studio on Top Sport, hosted the boxers, and they were very, very categorical, telling us we are suffering in Nakuru. And we exposed that, and it was in the news all over. And what happens after that, when the government and the LOC officials or the steering committee officials are delivering the training kit, the only soundbite they give is, you see, we have brought now, stop complaining in the media. Okay?
Yeah, that's what
it's the same attitude. So imagine these athletes, some of these athletes, let's go to the athletics camp. These athletes do not need to get free Nike gear. They don't. They have thousands of those in their wardrobes. Okay. So sometimes, and this is the truth, some of them will not complain in public, demanding to get the uniform. Because people will be asking, why are you complaining about that? Yet you have way more from maybe your other sponsors. That's a challenge. As a media, we stand accused. We did not do enough. But we still do what we can, and we do it to the best of our ability.
But even when we want to do enough, I remember CS Rio saying that athletes are not supposed to speak to journalists. Robert?
Yeah, they do that.
They do. I think, let me tell you, when
have a problem.
The meeting today with the stakeholders, I'll go back to that meeting again. I think after the resolutions come up, I mean, the investigations are done, and the resolutions will be brought out after the 30th of September, I think the list of stakeholders should grow. Some of the biggest beneficiaries of these athletes are actually the corporate. Yeah, they will wait for Rudisha to win and they will brand him, Blue Band, Fiato Fiako ni Fisafi or Kiwi or something like that. And we have all these people waiting for the athletes to come up. The media as well should be sitting in that stakeholders list so that you can channel all these views to the concerned groups and tell them, you know what, I think this is where the problem is, this is what we are getting from the athletes. And once we have a huge forum like that, then I think besides just having federations sitting as stakeholders, then the corporate world, the media, and everyone else who's supposed to be involved with these teams then should be sitting in that.
But the stakeholders themselves, you know, when we talk about stakeholders and you bring in the issue of the federations, these federations themselves are actually the first to be investigated.
They should be technical.
These are the people who are actually have messed up the whole thing before even passing on the back to NOC. The federation's already a mess. I was at the, you know, in 2012, I am sitting there at IOC, at the National Olympic Committee. This lady comes in and she's coming to pick up a check. The check, that was on a Thursday afternoon. She's picking up a check for the volleyball team, which is supposed to be leaving for Algeria for the final trials, for the Olympic trials on Sunday. The check is being picked on a Thursday afternoon. It cannot be cashed before then. The week before, there had been media reports that The volleyball team was being locked out of Kasarani because there was no money. This check is coming on a Thursday. When you ask the NOC, say, oh, you know they did not submit the requirements.
Budget.
But what I know, the Olympics, 4 years, we already know next stop is Tokyo. What do these guys do?
The
At
federations.
NOC?
Even
And the federations, what
yeah.
do they do?
What do they
And
do?
this is where the problem, because we are looking at even the federations.
Let's pass the conversation, but what's on?
Guys, we are forgetting one major person who should actually be the person who's taking all this blame, and that is CS Wario. And if people say that the sports journalists in this country have not done enough to fight any vice in sports, we have. So just last week, when the CS Wario was disbanding NOC, the first statement in that press conference was that the minister will not be taking questions. Do you know why? Because sports journalists really ask him hard questions. And we can go through to all the bulletins we've done in this, on NTV especially. And I will tell you the phone calls I get from his office telling us, we had this function. Yet you guys have gone with those questions you asked. Why are you sending reporters to ask these questions? Yeah? Are you guns for hire? Hey, I believe we've done enough. And the thing is very honest. He has no answers to any questions asked. Yet we ask those questions. And it's so easy for him to actually go ahead and gag these athletes from speaking to the media because they are exposing all those things. And journalists, we picked up those social media messages they sent.
Like the one on the screen right now.
Yes, we did.
Shortly.
So technically, Wario is deep in this mess.
Wario is not the person who should be driving any investigations. He is the one who should be under
should be
investigation.
investigated.
Simple as that.
I mean, look at what you have on the screen. Isn't it ironical that we're actually discussing Rio, but there is a bigger problem?
This is a cricket team.
This was the camp.
No, this is a cricket team.
This is a Kenya
cricket team.
Yeah. Where, you know, athletes and cricketers,
yeah, national cricket team.
the women's cricket team, complained being put in now another Rio mess, so to speak. In Nakuru, they posted pictures, and we keep saying
but
this.
But what happened soon after the pictures were posted? The players were sent away from the camp.
What is not
so
what
it
is
was
not
just a
posted,
PR stunt.
The players who
yeah,
exposed this.
Basically, you know, they posted about the living conditions, which was akin to what Wesley Korir was posting when the team was thrown out of the Olympic Village. And, you know, the Cricket Kenya...
No, they were not thrown out of the Olympic Village. Let me correct that. At least I was in Rio. The Olympic Village closed on 24th to prepare for the Paralympics. And the Kenyan team knew that the Olympic Village will close on the 24th. The only thing that the NOC did not do right is that they did not source for decent accommodation for the team. And they went sourcing for the accommodation, I think, from what I've heard, I cannot verify this, a week before the closure. A week before the closure, Rio was packed. Because there are also people moving out of the village and going to look for accommodation for their holidays. So the only place they could get was near the favelas.
I think Ken, I was making a point that in a case like this,
was it? We don't know. We don't know.
I mean, in a case like this, whistleblowers are now getting punished.
I know, but my question is related with that. Was it the standards were not good enough for a member of parliament, or the standard generally was not good enough for all the athletes? You know,
the standards were not good enough. I never went to that place because I tried to find that address, and even none of the athletes knew where this place was.
Okay.
So you can't even go there.
One thing you need to know, first of all, is that the IOC family, which basically means NOC, the chairman, and I think a couple of, a raft of other guys who are below the chairman, are VVIP. Yeah, very, very important people. They maybe stay in 7-star hotels and stuff. The head of whatever government, whether it's a delegation or stuff, will be picked up by the embassy and maybe they'll go to a 5-star hotel. So which means, in short, that in the Olympics, in the Olympic Games, besides the officials, everyone has been categorized in a different way. If you look at the village is not very comfortable. Even the one in Beijing was quite, you know, the rooms were quite small. Yeah, it's quite standard.
Just standard, yeah,
so
standard basically.
It depends. So when they say that these guys had to be thrown out of the village, then there was a problem with NOC. They should have maybe gotten flights for them earlier to leave.
No, but you see, the other thing is that the government booked tickets. But the reason why, as much as NOC is blaming the government for booking tickets, there was no good coordination between the NOC and the government, who are both sitting on the steering committee, to tell them that, look, the village is closing on the 24th. What happens to the team if they have to travel on the 25th.
And which
And
captain? Which captain? You know.
Exactly.
You
That's
know,
what they should have
abandons
done.
ship. I think many people were surprised to see, and I'm saying this with tremendous respect to the minister, many people were actually surprised to see him in Kenya before the team came back home. I mean, the rule of the thumb is that the captain is the last person to leave the ship.
But he actually left.
All
That's
right.
the other thing that you were discussing.
Yeah.
I know it will be posted shortly.
Yeah, and I'm saying we are sitting here also. Yet we have another unresolved controversy also with the Paralympics team. There are also allegations.
But even before you picked out something very important. Why is it that the team captain did not travel with the rest of the team? Because they're all in this shanty place. Where did he disappear to? Because he traveled in a different flight. He arrived on the same day, but on a different flight. Why is it that Team Kenya cannot travel as a team?
Yes.
If this is a problem, first of all, the athletes seem to have a problem with the government arranged travel or the NOC arranged travel. Has this ever been addressed? Is it the first time that you're seeing athletes traveling for a national assignment arriving differently? It's not the first time.
No, this is
the
normally the bulk of the team travels together.
They don't
take part in the parade together.
Yes.
And they come home together.
Actually, if you watch the parade, the parade was mainly officials.
For me, a big shame is that when we have our most successful Olympics, there was no welcome parade. People came in on their own anonymously and went to their village.
No, but this goes back to the NOC. This goes back to the NOC. They are not organized. They don't do their research because as the NOC, they also are. That is the responsibility.
That cannot be accurate. And cannot be honest. We have 4 years to prepare for.
That's the point. Robert Soy has made a point. Robert Soy has made a point about accreditation, which I think is very imperative that we bring this out. For as long as Kenya is going to take part in these internationally sanctioned events, we are going to see people who are not team managers, who are not players, who accompany the team. And because of a loophole, or so to speak, a provision among the IAAF, for instance, or even the IOC, they have accreditation based on hospitality. And it's at their discretion to invite whoever they feel.
Want to.
Yeah. I was in Germany in 2009 for the World Championships in athletics, and I saw officials. One person had an accreditation known as person accompanying team, fully accredited but belonging to the IAAF family. So it's actually impossible to question that kind of provision. But here's the deal. Could it be some of those people get double accreditation then, and then they draw allowances from the exchequer, yet they have been fully funded by either IAAF, either IOC, or FIFA in this case, when we are dealing about,
Yeah, but then I think there's only one, it's a simple thing that can be done. Can't we just synchronize the travels? Can the athletes be told a week before you're traveling on the 7th, and let them dispute it with the knowledge of the NOC? For instance, Kipchoge arrived in Rio, and there was no one to pick him. Why? Because he changed his flight. The manager changed him because he felt he should travel in a business class ticket, but he did not inform the NOC, according to the NOC, of his changed flight schedule. But why is it, even for NOC, they did not panic that their top marathoner did not arrive as scheduled, and they sat in their rooms and they were very comfortable.
Could be the reason they didn't even provide water for him.
Don't worry, I think they were acclimatizing in Brazil. The weather is quite good, the beach is looking nice.
I want us to have a final word, so Sadiq, as you speak.
Yeah, how much, and I'm just sitting here and thinking, are our editorial pieces not stinging enough? Do we need to put tear gas in them as we dispatch them on air, or we wrap up our newspapers with tear gas, so that some of these stories should elicit tears and in jeers in equal measure? Because are we hitting hard enough as journalists?
The reason I played the last part of Waihiga's story is to show the level of arrogance that the officials had. If you watched it, you saw the response that was given. If there is some, show me the evidence. You see, that's the level of arrogance. But ladies and gentlemen, I want us to close this discussion. I'll give you an opportunity. But first, I don't know if my director is ready. Perhaps he's not ready with it, but let's have.
Let me just finish what I'm saying. And I'm saying perhaps it's time for a paradigm shift, even from the journalists and from the editorial point of view in future. Perhaps we must plan, as athletes are preparing, we must also go back to our newsrooms and plan our coverage and try to anticipate all angles of coverage beforehand, so that we can be able then to widen our nets. And if we need to hold the minister accountable, then whether he takes questions or not, he must be answerable, not just to us, but the public, because the public are his employers. Again, we must also question ourselves and say, have we been truthful to this country? Even to our own profession, have we been truthful in terms of articulating issues that affect this country? Or are we in bed with the people that we are purporting to criticize and say they have failed? I think that I'll leave it at that this time.
I think really as sports journalists, we have to up our game. Beyond reporting results and the drama of what's happening on the field, it is that sports is a major business, and it needs to be given the same kind of coverage that you will give anything else, which means beyond the results, beyond who scored, beyond who ran what, there are all those other stories, and those are the ones which I think a lot we missed or did not pursue aggressively enough. Within our media houses, I think we should take it as our responsibility to push sports to the front page and make sure it gets the resources needed to do some of these things that need to be done. We don't have to be content with that small leader at the bottom of the page once a week. I think we have to make sure that any day can be a sports day where you can have a page one story and the main editorial, and take a very strong position where it needs to be taken. Going forward, I think we must be at the forefront now in demanding change in the way our sports is managed. It needs professionalism. It needs to move away from these people who have become politicians by running sports or mismanaging sports organizations. But we also have to recognize that while we want some independence and some professionalism in the sports management bodies, we don't want too much government interference. Right now, because we're angry, we're demanding government interference. But I know from history, I know that any place where the government gets its hand in, they end up messing more. Yeah. They end up actually making the situation worse. So we have to get that balance right.
All right, I'll give you a final opportunity to give us your take on this. But first, let's take a look at something else that makes our talk lighter here. And punches were thrown, clothes were torn, but they can't agree, or they couldn't agree on a formula. That means winners also could not be declared, but the result is clear, as Kinyanjui reports.
The Nyeri County Assembly was again in the news recently for all the war reasons after MCS differed over a motion to impeach Governor Derito Gachagua. Guesswork sought to dig deeper into the matter, and the reads that we've heard since indicate mischief from both sides of the divide. The member at the center of the controversy, who claims to have been clobbered by a gang of fellow honorables, appeared in front of media cameras akiwa amebeba tai kwa mkono, a move that we interpret was to signify victimization, as in his hands were tied. But his alleged attacker denied the allegations.
Alijirarua shati namna hii. Mimi nilikuwa hata mzee. Alafu anasema ati ni mchika ndiye akapigwa na wengine. He's a cartoonist.
These claims by the attackee have also been put in question because
pigwa na mtu anaitwa Gilia alinislapu hapa.
Had he really been slapped, he would have availed his cheeks at the DCI offices to be checked for his slapper's fingerprints. This incident was marred by a back and forth of accusations and chest thumping, but one thing was very clear from the snitching.
I was attacked by 5 MCs. That is Honorable Stephen Monohe, Honorable Joroge Githaiga, Honorable Stephen Mwaniki, Honorable Washira Waruru, and Honorable Jacinta Waloi.
Despite clobbering each other, they still called each other honorables. What could be this as the definition ya kuheshimiana? Nothing. In our research, we were very confused by this statement in regard to the Swahili quote, akili ni nywele.
And what I'm expecting, since I'm smarter than them,
But this was later clarified that he meant he was better dressed. The allegedly attacked member suffered head injuries which include and not limited to hair loss and even skin tone had a torn shirt and he was the only member who showed side effects of a beating. Propaganda reaching the media was that his shirt was torn because fellow members suspected that he was hiding a six-pack, which is against the Waheshimiwa culture. And so to dispel these rumors, he took this modeling test to prove haters wrong and that it was just that his pot belly was taking a little longer to grow as he is a first-time member. In the meantime, the back and forth of accusation is still on.
Kwa nini Kavaru alituma waheshimiwa wote wapigwe na wakora? Akatuma kila mheshimiwa sote tukapigwa na viboko.
As the reputation of the Nyeri County Assembly continues to suffer. Representing the guesswork fraternity on Prosperous, it is the one and only Kenya.
All right, talking about taking the lead, about 90% of all the tweets that I have read here are talking about one thing: CS Wario must go. Apart from just talking about what happened and the blunders and the false starts, that is a rallying call on social media. So as we close, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take a few minutes and reflect on this. Is it time that even that position was reconsidered, or we have another opportunity to make right wrong?
I think, for me, in my case, I think, first of all, what you've said is right. We have to reconsider that position. Having a ministry and a culture, youth, sport, it's too much. What we have seen is that Wario is culture bent. He's not so much. He's only now into sports because of the Olympics. And maybe when we have maybe the World Youth coming up and everything like that. But then as the accounting officer, the man who was chairing the steering committee, Wario must step aside. If the only way to be able to just show that, yes, that if something went wrong, then I was the man in charge, then he has to step aside as much as he has disbanded the NOC. But I do not believe that disbanding NOC is the solution. Okay. Because certainly the wrath of it is bigger. The effect on the sports is much harder than we are feeling it for now. Wait until the IOC acts and then all the international federations will isolate Kenya. And when Kenya is isolated, our athletes will feel it. We as journalists, also us, we will feel it, because why would I want to just be covering local news? So I think Wario should go.
It's time. All right. Topic 600 million.
600 million, I think it's going to be accounted for, and I'm not buying the idea of us trying to be nice to the IOC. We have had a lot of messes in this country from time. It's become legendary. We cannot afford to wait again another 4 years and again come and sit here, like guys have said, instead of sitting, winners sitting here, is again journalists debating on the same. Let's take the bull by the horns, disband an NOC, let's wait for the wrath of the IOC. And remember that Kenya, as a nation, and as a sporting nation, there will be no Olympics worth its salt without a Kenyan athlete.
Ah, really?
So basically,
what happened in next? What happened?
No, wait. Because why I'm saying this is because any athlete who runs in the Olympics, especially from the middle and long distance, if there is no Kenyan there, even if they win, they know it's a lackluster.
But people won.
But you know, but
exactly when there was the boycott without the Kenyan.
But remember the 1980 Moscow, it is not even talked about. Why? Because most of the African countries are not there. I mean, let's face it. We need to clean up house, and if we have got to clean up house, we have got to sacrifice. That sacrifice will include, let's get banned and let's sit back and let's clean up house.
All right, very shortly because we are out of time.
Yes, it's very achievable. Sports journalists, so many times we beat ourselves so much, and we've done it before. We've cleaned up football in this country. Sports journalists did that. They cleaned up football. Whether it went to the right direction, we're still yet to find out. But we have changed football over the years, and now we can see some hope. Kenya is now playing in friendly matches. Unbelievable. That is happening now. That is besides the point. Now, in as much as Evelyn says that...
Make it short.
I'm making it very short. In as much as Evelyn says that Wario is more culture-bent, yeah. I beg to differ. We've seen so many artists in this country complain about him.
Where is he then?
And this is not the first time he's actually letting the country down. He's let the country down when the Harambee Stars was traveling to Cape Verde. Again, a bungled trip under the Ministry of Sports. Secondly, we had the anti-doping bill in this country. He misled the president. He let the president sign a bill that was later to be declared non-compliant by WADA. I think that's embarrassing enough, and I think that sports in this country need something better. And believe me, we would have probably
someone
better people.
We would have come back. I believe we would have come back with more medals than we did.
All right, Robert,
make it short. I think the CS has had you guys. Clearly, what you guys have said is had you. I want to say this. I think athletes have sacrificed a lot. They've done a lot for this country over time, and they're actually international brands. We only support them sometimes when they're running on the pitch. When they do not win, some people complain. We only want to see gold medals and stuff. But I think the sports law should be followed to the latter.
Okay, compliance.
Compliance, and it has to be so that we can, all these issues can be put aside, and let everything, all the athletes compete on the field, and bring us that glory that we're all yearning for.
Right.
Whether Rio should go or not, I leave that to the appointing authority, but I'm very clear in my mind, the appointing authority does not fire. He didn't fire Waiguru, didn't fire Olelenku, so we're going to leave it to him to be able to make his judgment. But I shudder to imagine what would happen if Kenya is banned by IOC, considering 2020 Olympic qualification starts as early as next year. If we don't have an NOC in place, we are missing out. Last point, but significantly, I shudder to imagine having Kenya to host next year's IAAF World Under-18 Championship, the last one of its kind, under the same ministry and under the same leadership, and critically so, the president of Confederation of African Football was here, Issa Hayatou, just 3 days ago, to look at 2018, Football Chan, African Nation Championship. I shudder to imagine the kind of problems we are going to have if what we have seen so far, the precedents, is what we're going to have. I think everybody should do some bit of soul searching, whether you're going to wait for that phone call from State House or whether you'll make a point to, take responsibility. You got to leave it to the minister to make up his mind on it.
Well said. Macharia, finally.
We have been trying over the last few years to mature into this culture where a person of responsibility takes personal responsibility when things go wrong. In this case, it can only be Wario to take that step and take that personal responsibility and step aside. And if he's defiant, then whoever appointed him must remove him or take the flak himself. Secondly, about Wario and culture, I'd also like to disagree with Evelyn. If you talk people who are in arts and culture, they'll tell you that this is the worst minister they have ever seen.
So where is he?
And the biggest, there was a scandal, was it a year ago? There was a cultural festival somewhere, and the ministry licensed some Chinese fellows to go and represent Kenya. How low can you get?
Yep. All right. Well said. Need not belabor on the points. You have heard it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Evelyn Wata, Topi, Watson, Robert, Sadiq, and of course, Macharia Gaitho. Thank you very much. Remember, all these people are on Twitter. The conversation goes off air, but continues online. My name is Ken Mijungu. Let's do this again next week, same time right here on NTV. Have a good night.